knowing that you'll respect them in the morning with intelligent talk that stimulates.
Welcome back to the program Inside the News. Okay, this is a discussion we had off air and it was on our sheet. This is our Picking Up the Pieces segment. And the question, Frank, is, has America and Americans, and I'm talking the greater America, lost interest in the Ukrainian war? Frank, go.
Has to do with attention span. Americans have a short attention span, and it's getting shorter all the time. I think Americans were enthusiastic about helping Ukraine beat the Russians, but as this war has dragged on, thanks to Joe Biden's slow delivery of weaponry, I think Americans are losing patience. Basically, they say we should win this thing or get out of it. And the problem, again, is the delivery of weapon systems. If we had delivered the weapons that we had given to Ukraine now, if we had started that delivery earlier on in this conflict, I think this conflict, frankly, would have been over by now. We're seeing an extension of that this summer. The Ukrainian offensive would have been greatly enhanced if Ukrainians had been given the F-16s they've been asking for since the day the first Russian soldier walked into Ukraine. The Biden administration is playing a game of appeasing both sides. They are appeasing those who say we should help the Ukrainians by delivering slowly some weapon systems to the Ukrainian government. On the other hand, they're appeasing their base that says we don't want to get involved in this war. America's a bad country. We shouldn't get involved in things overseas by slow walking the delivery of those weapon systems. The Biden administration, as has it done in every other instance, has taken the worst of all possible courses. If the Biden government wants to get this thing going, if it wants to get the American people back on the side of helping Ukraine, get those F-16s to Kyiv, get this war over with using those weapons. If it slow walks this weapons systems again and again and again, the American public will lose interest.
Okay, Ben, you had a very distinctive point of view on this. Go.
Yeah, the general theme, you're right, Guy. The sentiment is trending against Ukraine, or at least against continued large money support for Ukraine, because there's war weariness among the U.S. populace. And to me, that's natural and predictable. But this, to me, is an issue of strategic leadership, and it has to come from the president. Just like Ronald Reagan pushed the whole Star Wars narrative and the defense buildup with a strategic view to cause the collapse of the Soviet Union, he fought a lot of popular resistance to what he was doing. He was called a warmonger. Popular music was all about the coming nuclear war because of this cowboy in the White House called Ronald Reagan, who was driving the world to nuclear war. Well, Reagan was right and all the critics were wrong. Roosevelt in 1940 and 41 faced overwhelming congressional and popular sentiment against any involvement in World War II. And he pushed single-handedly for Lend-Lease. He pushed it through Congress. He reinstituted the draft. He did a lot of war planning and war preparation, which was all through the sheer force of his personality as a leader. And as a result, we were much better positioned once Pearl Harbor came and we entered the war. So this is a question of strategic leadership. The U.S. must support Ukraine. It's not an easy fight to beat an army the size of the Russian military, and it will take time. But it is catastrophic to the West and the entire world if Putin wins in Ukraine. He cannot be allowed to win. War in Europe matters, as history has shown us time and again. So this does matter strategically to the American people.
Okay, Frank, we have about a minute left here. Let's go back, pick up the pieces from segment number one. Using heat, is that going to be propelling climate change?
It's called summer. The reality of it is that all the evidence doesn't work in favor of the climate change extremist. You can go back to ancient Rome where it was warmer then than it is now, and I didn't see, Julius Caesar running around in an SUV. When the Norman conquest of England occurred in 1066, there were crops being grown in the south of England that today can only be grown no further north than the south of France. What's going to affect this climate change debate is facts. And the media and the Democrats have done everything in their power to make sure that if you say anything based on a fact, that you are therefore a racist, you are a climate denier, you are some kind of horrible person. If you look, however, inside the curriculum of schools from kindergarten through graduate school, climate change is not taught as a subject of science. It is taught as a religion. If you question climate change, you are a heretic. Get the fires going. Let's burn the heretic at the stake. We've got to get this discussion back to a question of facts, not faith.
It's the Church of Climatology, folks. We've said that before. So we're going to talk about it, maybe some more in the next segment to close things out. Stay with us. We'll be back.
Here's Guy Wayman, Ben Brunson, and Frank Vernuccio, Inside the News.
Well, welcome back to our final segment of Inside the News with Frank Vernuccio with the American Analysis of News and Media, Ben Brunson, the author of The Falstaff Enigma, and Esther Sling. Okay, we've got to go back to this because Ben says, I want my turn. And he said before on a past program, he says, this thing about climate change is a big hoax. Do you still stand by this, Ben?
Absolutely. And in fact, the climatology religion is a death cult, as occasionally slips out from people like Kamala Harris, who talk about the need to reduce the population. But if you go into the World Economic Forum and the Klaus Schwabs of the world, they're all about radically reducing the population on this planet. And the policies they propose are all about declining wealth and stripping you of your rights and your wealth. Not the elites. They can fly around in their private jets just fine. But you need to not have a range or a refrigerator or AC or a car or anything else. It is a death cult. And unfortunately, this hoax goes on and on and on. The latest manifestation this summer is all of the orange flaming heat maps that show the typical summer going on in the United States, now with bright red colors all across the United States. Well, compared to any summertime map from 20 years ago, and it's hilarious to look at the difference. Last summer it was mega drought. All we heard last summer was the West is in a mega drought, one in 1,000-year mega drought. Well, that all changed when we had record rain and snowfall starting in the fall last year and going through the winter. And as a result, one of the interesting things is that burn acreage in this country is at a 150-year low because there's been so much rain out west. And so much floodwaters everywhere out west that we are at a record low in the United States. They've had fires up in Canada, but not in the United States. It is an ongoing hoax. The numbers are cooked. The numbers are adjusted by NASA and NOAA, and they're adjusted to get rid of the incredible heat we had in the 20s and 30s in this country. Heat today is nothing like it was in the 1930s, and any objective analysis would tell you that. So educate yourself on the issue, and you'll find out the reality.
And I hate to say it, but the Weather Channel, they have been bought out. They're looking at DEI numbers and ESG numbers and BlackRock investment.
Even Fox News is into this stuff recently, and that really breaks my heart, but they're as bad as anyone else.
Absolutely. Okay, as we do each and every week, and there's now plenty of time to expand on hot button topics. Frank, you go first.
What could kind of make all the other issues we discussed insignificant is an asteroid ramming into Earth and doing to us what it did to the dinosaurs. Talk about global climate change. A huge asteroid called 2023 NT1 reached as close as about 62,000 miles from Earth, just a quarter of the distance from the Earth to the moon. It wasn't until a couple of days before this asteroid approached Earth that NASA actually found out about it. They just didn't see it at all. It's larger than the asteroid that caused the meteor crater in Arizona. Certainly something of that size could wipe out a major city if it hit in the wrong place. It calls to mind the need for NASA to do what NASA is supposed to do. During the Obama administration, the funding from NASA was taken away from things like asteroid detection and especially from manned spaceflight into climate stuff. Just dovetailing of what we were just talking about before. Preventing the Earth from being hit by an asteroid, putting together plans to deflect such an asteroid, that's really what NASA should be doing. That's what's being ignored by the media. So take your climate change and understand what the last meteor did to the dinosaurs and what it could do to us.
Okay, Ben, your hot button topic.
Well, we got to stick with weather. So all we get is stories about how hot it is in the U.S. in late July, oddly enough, and in Europe, the heat waves. So I tune into the British Open on Saturday, the third round, expecting to see people sweltering. It's a nice sunny day at Royal Liverpool. And what do I find? Everybody is wearing jackets and sweaters because it's so cold there. And I'm thinking, oh, well, this is in Liverpool, so it's up north a little bit. Maybe London's not so bad. I get a call later that day from a friend of mine who's in London, and I asked him about the weather, and he goes, well, I got a jacket on because it's pretty cool here. This is the typical never ends. Even here in Orlando, I had an extreme weather alert yesterday. It was 87 degrees, which is cooler than usual in late July. And last night, my wife and I are walking around 81 degrees, absolutely perfect. This insanity never stops. It'll keep going because it is the hoax driving the political narrative.
Absolutely fantastic show this week. Frank, thanks.
Great being with our audience. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you to our listeners.
And thank you so much to our listeners and our affiliates all across. And thank you so much for joining us each and every week. And join us again next week when we once again go Inside the News.
You're listening to Wayman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Inside the News.